It's conferences in general practice. There's so many conferences in various different types, methods, and routes that are coming to what you can do. And in this episode, myself and Andy are going to talk about some of the conferences that are definitely coming up, some of the ones that we're going to be at and you get the opportunity to join us at, and also what you need to think about if you are thinking of going to any of these conferences as we continue to tech enhance your primary care and learning. Hello, HETT learners, and welcome to this episode where myself and Andy are going to talk about conferences, and more conferences. How are we doing there, Andy?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Gandhi. Yeah, really looking forward to conference season this year. We've got political conferences, we've got medical conferences, all sorts of conferences coming up. So it's a good time for us to think about what our kind of top tips for attending conferences are and how to get the most out of them. I know we'll also be talking about which conferences we're excited about and also what kind of themes that we're interested in exploring or what we think will feature in conferences this year in 2024. So yeah, really excited to share thoughts with you.
Definitely. And we've got quite a lot to cover, so we're going to get cracking with that and stuff. So just before we do, we are going to give you a little bit of a sneak peek. So myself and Andy are actually at quite a few of the conferences we're going to talk about. And if you want the opportunity to meet us there, then please do, simply put. So the two big ones that many of you are probably going to attend are the RCGP conference in Liverpool and the Best Practice conference in Birmingham. We're going to be at both of those for both days. In fact, we're presenting at both of those as well. So if you want to come and say hi, feel free to grab us. We will be there. We're more than happy to support you and stuff. And we are even doing some funky things as well at some of those conferences, not just speaking, but some extra stuff as well. So make sure you do catch us at those events and stuff. But I guess we wanted to talk about them in a kind of like a time order, didn't we, Andy?
Yeah. So let's look at what's coming up. And Gandhi, you've kindly organised some significant conferences in time order, and we might dip a little deeper into some of those that are perhaps the important ones, and just make people aware of some of the other ones. So yeah, what have you got on our list, Gandhi?
So we're actually recording this on the 21st of September. And the reason why that's relevant is we've literally just finished off our own conference. So GP5T8, which is our training trainers to train trainees conference that we do with Tara, George and stuff. And in terms of that as a conference, it's one we love. It's the 8th one we've done. It's been remote and helping trainers to understand loads of stuff. Awesome content. And I guess the reason why I want to mention it is well, we just finished it. But B, if you want to get access to the recordings for that, feel free to do so. The links to this and various other stuff we're going to talk about will be in the show notes below. And please use those to access every single one of these events and stuff if you want to. But yeah, it was a great conference, wasn't it, Andy? And it's the first on our list.
Yeah, really enjoyed it. As I say, we're just buzzing after that. So I think that's why it's made it to the top of our list. And I think people can still kind of register and watch the videos again, as you say, which is great. Then the next conference on the list, which we believe is starting tomorrow, 22nd to 25th of September in Liverpool, is the Labour Party Conference. So not just medical conferences coming up at the beginning of the autumn, but also all of the main party conferences. And Labour's the first one. It's going to be quite a big one for healthcare. As I said, as we may have alluded to, I think Lord Darcy has been conducting a report on the future of the NHS, or a sort of a stock take on the NHS. I think that came out a few days ago. I've been away on a cruise ship for a while, so I haven't been able to go through it. I'm hoping Gandhi will delve into that in the next.
So I already went into it because, as Andy mentioned, he was on a cruise ship, so he was a little bit indisposed, completely disconnected. You will not believe how much he disconnected, which is a good thing, very good thing. But yes, I did cover it in the last episode that's live, where we talked about I talked about the BMA safe working, and then in addition to that, the Darcy got review and stuff, and covered how it was actually surprisingly more positive around general practice, but definitely set out some of the challenges and stuff. It's been interesting to see the media take on it and things since then. And I think we will end up having some sort of response from Wes Streeting or Keir Starmer at the party political conference in Liverpool.
That's it. They've what do they say? They've rolled the pitch, prepared the lawn. So now we'll get to see what they build on that, really, in terms of they've done their preparation. So we'll identify what the problems and themes are. So we'll see what their proposed solutions are at the party conference. So really looking forward to that. What's next, Gandhi, on the list?
So next, I believe it's on the Wednesday coming after that. So it's the HETT conference. So this is Health Excellence Through Technology. It's a big tech conference that happens down at the Excel in London. Massive. In fact, this is where people go to talk about technology and healthcare and things. Fortunately, can't attend because it's right before the week of the RCGP and the other conferences that both me and Andy are going to. I know loads of people are going to this. This is a big deal. It's a massive conference. It's on the size of best practice and stuff. So if you are going there, hope you have a great time. Very jealous that we can't join you and stuff. It's definitely one to check out and stuff and things, which is acutely followed by the next party political conference, which is from the Conservative Party in Birmingham.
Yeah, so obviously they are not in power anymore. No. So mate, I think, what does it matter? What the Conservative Party think, but I think they will have some very interesting and radical things to say about the future of the NHS and healthcare in the United Kingdom over the next few years. Now that they're not close to power and they don't have any way of making any of this happen, so they won't be quite. What they say won't be as alarming as it might have been in the past when they were the party in power. So I think we might see some interesting ideas and thoughts come through, and it might be that there's lots of those, given that there's a number of different people vying for to be the next leader of the Tory party. So I think it'd be an interesting space to watch in terms of the sorts of ideas that come, and the kind of voice that the opposition will have on health. Any particular reason that you were excited about the Conservative Party, Gandhi?
Well, I think this may be the first part where we see people pitch their kind of sales to be the next leader for the Tory party, effectively. Rishi Sunak, obviously he said he will hold the fort until they elect a new leader. He's kind of disappeared a little bit from the mainstream media and stuff and things. But I suspect, this is where they're going to be pitching who's going to be the next leader, and then the actual opposition to Keir Starmer and, the Labour Party and things. So I think that was the reason why I wanted to put it down. There was a second one, which we're going to come to in a second, but that's after we talk about best practice, which is not next, because the next one is the RCGP annual conference. So this is in Liverpool. This is the 3rd to the 4th of October. Myself and Andy are going to be there. We are there presenting on Friday at 1:55, talking about breaking barriers and talking to your patients and stuff in that particular session. So you're
engagement in primary care, isn't it? With all sorts of stakeholders, yes. Patients, PCNs, practices,
all that kind of stuff. But I think that it's going to be an interesting one because Wes Streeting is down to attend on the Friday at 9 o'clock. Now, it's interesting when you look at the RCGP conference, they've normally been able to have a significant speaker, and obviously they've now got Secretary of State for Health due to attend. We have had occasions where they have pulled out at the last second. We've also had some significant announcements on those days as well. So some of you may remember a couple of years back when Sajid Javid released the winter pressures funding on the same day and chose not to attend the conference for that reason. It'll be interesting to see what happens at the RCGP one, won't it, Andy?
Yeah, interesting. I saw Jeremy Hunt there one year, and he was surprisingly compelling as a speaker in person, actually. So it'd be really interested to see how Wes Streeting comes across.
I think one thing I would say to many people, the RCGP conference is a massive event. It's one of the biggest conferences for general practice. It does come with cost. I know me and Andy are having to, pay to attend and various other things and stuff. And just bearing in mind the content and the quality of stuff that comes through from there. So lots of, I think, positive engagement and stuff that comes through. I've always come away from that conference feeling a sense of positivity around general practice. Yeah. I definitely needed that right now.
Yeah, they normally manage to make it quite an uplifting experience for everybody there. And they have really well organized, great app, number of streams. You can get up to date with sort of clinical issues, clinical practice, but also, sort of softer issues around the culture and other issues happening in general practice is all represented there as well. So it's going to be an interesting one.
Yep. Following that, so I've got a brief thing. I've got Partners Away Day the day after the RCGP's conference, and that's in Birmingham. Before we go back to Birmingham, the following week on the 9th and 10th of October, where myself and Andy are going to be at the Best Practice Conference in Birmingham. And I'm really looking forward to this one. We went last year, didn't we, Andy? We had a great time.
Yeah, we were on a panel, weren't we, with Tara Humphreys last year. So that was really, really exciting, talking about primary care networks. And I know we've got some interesting things planned. So I think we will have a presence at the conference, and we're just finalizing the plans, really. But I think we're looking to do some various recording as well as networking. So people may have a chance to appear on EGP Learning if they catch up with us at Best Practice.
Definitely. So 2-day event, the second day in particular, I'm chairing the PCN transformation stage, both at the beginning and the start, and sorry, in the end. And as Andy said, we're hoping to do some really interesting stuff at Best Practice. We're working with the conference providers, see if we can do some really cool things. I've also got something really special planned for those of you that do track us down and stuff. Limited edition supply things that, so you will have to be quick, and I may ask you to do certain things as well in order to get them. And really looking forward to meeting a lot of the providers and basically catching up with loads of people that I know and that I also don't know. So I found out that there's Neil Paul's going to be speaking right after I've done my chair's address, and I've known Neil for a while, but never actually met him. It's one of those weird situations, Andy, where you know someone and never physically met them, and I've finally got the opportunity to do so. So I'm looking forward to that.
Excited. It's always know people on social media and so forth, don't you? And then you only ever really get to see them at conferences. So that's really nice to catch up with people as well, isn't it? And network.
And I said that we'd talk about why Birmingham was interesting. So really weird little factoid we've got for you. So the Labour Party's in Liverpool and the RCGP conference is in Liverpool. The Tory Party conference is Birmingham, and the Best Practice conference in Birmingham. So basically a week after each of those conferences, we're in those actual cities for conferences. It's a weird factoid, but it's a factoid for you nonetheless.
Good. So so what else is left on the conference list, Gandhi?
So then for October, we've got the Pathfinders at Google. So this is a really interesting lifestyle focused event done by a variety of people. And myself and Andy have been down to quite a few conferences down at Google HQ a couple of times and YouTube and stuff. I think this could be a really interesting event. So if you're interested in lifestyle impacts on healthcare and stuff, definitely have a look at that if you're in London at the time. And then in November, I'm speaking at I'm participating and speaking about 4 different conferences. So first up on the 8th, I'm down at Medics Money Live. If you are a GP partner interested in this, I highly recommend attending. It's an absolutely awesome conference. This is my 3rd or 4th time I'm going there. The team at Medics Money are awesome, and it's one of the most fun conferences I ever go to. It's the reason why I insist on going back every single time, and I love it. So if you want to come join me, I'm going to be talking about the 10 tech things that save me time in general practice. So really useful, I hope. And then I'm going to Guidelines at the Excel. So that's by the same team that bring you the Guidelines book and all that kind of stuff, with Practice Index as well, who supported me being there the second day. And I mentioned earlier about, meeting people. There's quite a few people that I'm going to have the opportunity to meet who I haven't seen in ages. And one I found out is my actual GP trainer is going to be there talking as well. I don't even think he knows that I'm going to be there, and I haven't contacted him or anything, but he's literally
tracking down.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to that. I haven't seen him in a while. And it's really good value, actually. It's 49 quid if you want to join now. Goes up to 99 compared to, I guess, the RCGP conference, which is several £100 and stuff.
That's very affordable.
Yeah. And then I wanted to give a shout out to a conference that I would love to attend, but unfortunately I'm speaking at Guidelines at the same time. And that's the Future Health one by the BMA. And if those of you know, Dr. Keith Grimes, who's basically the AI legend of general practice and healthcare right now. He's going to be chairing that particular day and stuff and things. So definitely go check that out if Guidelines is not in your scape and stuff. And then finally, I'm talking to the LMC Lincoln conference, tail end of November on the 22nd, about managing your barriers and breaking your limits. That was it. Sorry. Sorry. Apologies, everyone. We've just done a 4-hour conference. We're a little bit flustered at the moment, but hey ho, I'm so looking forward to all this stuff. And I'm sure there's conferences we've not mentioned, ones we missed out. Apologies if that's the case, but I'll put lists to all of these events down.
Breaking your limits. What's that about?
So this is about collective action. So, the whole concept of limits within general practice and stuff. So safeguarding and breaking your limits in general practice. So yeah, I've got some weird stuff planned for that one, some proper geeky stuff. Andy knows my love of Dragon Ball Z and how they always talk about limit breakers and stuff in that. So yeah, I'm going to find a way to put that in.
Okay. Oh, cool. Yeah, that sounds good. I'm not going to that, but that sounds interesting, actually. Cool. Okay. So, right. So lots of conferences that people could potentially go to. I'm sure there's a number probably that we haven't included on the list, but really, really exciting. And it sounds like you're going to be really, really incredibly busy over the next few months, Gandhi. So I'd hate to be managing your diary for you. So I guess what are the key themes that you'll be interested in? There's obviously lots going on in the world of general practice, clinical management, politics, culture. But what are the key things that kind of you'll be looking out for? Maybe we can go one from you, one from me, and kind of work our way through. But
I guess I'm going to kick off with the big one that I think is going to be quite relevant is the concept of GP collective action and stuff. We're seeing so much of that, and I think that's definitely going to be on the agenda. I think it's going to twin with probably what you're going to mention in a second, but in terms of how collective action is impacting general practice, we're now a few weeks into it, and I think some parts are having some impact, some parts maybe not. And clearly, I think following the party political conferences, we will have more ideas of where this may end up driving and heading towards from, that's the cool thing about the timing of these. You've got all the GP conferences right after the party political ones. So you've got the government saying what they're going to do and general practice basically responding.
Yeah. So I'm keen to get a sense of it. I think conferences are really good as well because you get to hear from the speakers, but you also get to sort of take the temperature of the profession by speaking to the people on the floor as well. Those people that you're meeting to, listening to the types of questions that people are asking, which gives you an indication as to where people's heads are at with these issues. I was going to kick off with, we've already talked about it, national NHS policy. So we'll have had some announcements. We've had the Darcy report. We'll have had some announcements from the Labour Party conference about the direction of NHS policy and general practice policy, and then we get the kind of the response or the follow-up from people in the Royal Colleges, the BMA, and from people in NHS England who often have the opportunity to talk at these conferences. So it's really worth paying attention to what they are saying, particularly this year, because we're at the start of a new government, a new parliament. So that'll give you a sense of the direction things are going to go, hopefully for the next 2 years without too many U-turns or changes. So
and I think
really
the other thing I'd add into that, so the one I forgot to mention is actually there's the England LMC conference on the 15th of November, which I'm hoping to go attend because I did just see the UK one back in May. People may remember me covering that in the channel. But again, I think that's going to be the key point where a lot of the collective action discussions will really come to the fore and stuff. And so we will hear stuff heading towards that.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to say, Gandhi, is which relates to speaking to people on the floor, really. I'm really interested to understand like the state that general practice is in at the moment, and particularly interested to kind of talk to some of the kind of newer GPs because we hear a lot about difficulties finding jobs, finding enough locum sessions to get by. So I'm really interested just to kind of take the temperature of that on the floor and hear from people, because that's not something I have kind of direct contact with on a day-to-day basis. Yeah.
Definitely agree with that. But I think there are other things we want to also know about. So if we're going a little bit wider than collective action and politics and that kind of stuff, I know there was one that you've been quite involved with that you wanted to talk about, wasn't there, Andy?
Yeah, so I'm really interested in integrated neighbourhood working or integrated neighbourhood teams. It's something that I'm involved with locally in Nottingham in terms of the rollout or development of integrated neighbourhood working in Nottingham City. And I'm really, really interested to know what people are doing in other parts of the country, and what's going well, what isn't going well. Things that I can learn, and maybe some things that I can share from Nottingham as well. So that's a key theme that I'll particularly be paying attention to. So definitely that. Anything else on your list, Gandhi?
Well, I guess we wouldn't be remiss if we didn't talk about tech and how tech is going to impact various different aspects of things. So what's the latest stuff this year? And I guess the big one that's definitely going to come through is how is AI impacting everything we do? Because actually, I've already had a look at some of the sponsors for some of these events, and it's changed a little bit. But one thing that's definitely coming through is lots of AI providers and stuff for primary care and healthcare and stuff coming through for many of these conferences. So what does that mean? Is it triage based? Is it ambient scribing? How are they going to work? What impact will this have on everybody else and stuff? So I'm really keen to hear about not only the providers, because obviously we talk a lot about the providers on the channel and sharing what they might be up to all of you EGP learners, but also how is it being used, hearing those sessions of what impact it's having, what people are doing. I think that's going to be really interesting to see and hear. And is there something newer, more interesting coming to the fore? I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah, I'm really excited by having conversations around the tech as well with the providers
Mhm,
and with people there. Yeah, on my list is looking at AI triage, just something I think we've not got quite right at the practice at the moment
mhm,
in terms of our triage of electronic consultations. Things to make my life easier in terms of notes summarization and support writing referrals, writing letters. There are some products that I'd like to talk to the developers and manufacturers about. Quite interested actually in how technology can support patient behavior change, which is something I've
mhm.
not heard or seen a lot about recently, but I think could be quite important for the types of population health management problems that I'm sort of engaging with at our place-based partnership. So really interested to look at that as well. And also I'm interested to see how this space around the evidence base behind the use of AI and other technology platforms the state of the evidence base really, and um, I'd like to see if I can become clearer about what the evidence is behind some of the benefits, both for patients but also the working lives of GPs and doctors. Or is there any new evidence on safety? It's an area that I think it's about time we had more
Yeah.
data on now, so that we can fully understand the decisions that we're making when we are choosing to deploy or procure technology products. I'd like to see how that's developing. Any other tech themes, Gandhi?
No, I think you covered a lot of it. I think there's so many things coming out there, and particularly in terms of safety. One of the concerns I've definitely got is a lot of those people are starting to use a lot of the AI-driven platforms without considering the data governance impacts that a lot of them have. And I think there's different levels of data safety that people consider, and it is important. And more importantly, I think for partners, because you may have people in practices using tools that you're not even aware of that actually has a data governance risk, and because you've not validated and had them approved and that kind of stuff, the risk is predominantly with the partners in terms of the liability if there was to be an issue. So it's just being aware of those kind of issues, and how are providers helping with that? How are people understanding those risks? I did a video to explain a lot of that recently off an article by Dave Trisker, who, if you don't follow, really do. He's awesome at talking about some of this stuff and things. But I think, it's just being aware of the positives and the negatives, because, that's
Yeah.
what we like to do on EGP.
And how
We
you
like to show.
yeah. So I was going to say how you manage those risks. I know we've
Yeah.
recently put in place a policy at the practice about the use of electronic tools and so forth, which is a good way as a partner of managing the risk.
Mhm.
Because if people don't follow the guidance that you've issued at the practice, then that's more their problem. That's a way of protecting the partnership, I
Mhm.
guess, and providing clarity about what people can and can't or should or shouldn't be using and how they use it. So yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting theme, isn't it? I don't think people have really got their heads fully around that as much as they should. So, yeah, so we're looking at tech. Any other sort of big themes that you're paying attention to, Gandhi?
No, I think that's a lot of it. I think next we wanted to talk about actually going to conferences and stuff. So obviously we said that we're going to be there. We've got loads of things planned that we're going to doing a little bit extra than I think most people would, but actually be worth talking about what you might want to think about if you're attending a conference. Do you want to talk us about kind of your tips and stuff, Andy, that you
My
had?
tips. Yeah, so I know, Gandhi, you'll have lots and lots of tech tips. So my main tip is to be quite organized and do a little bit of homework before you go to the conference. So the challenge that I often have at the conference is I'm a little bit introverted. So actually, talking to people and making introductions, it can be a bit of a challenge just to get started. I'm
Mm,
normally good once I get going. So you want to try and make sure you've got something to say at conferences. So have a think about what problems you're having and what you need help with, or what problems you want to solve in all the roles that you have, as a GP, or if you have other extended roles, those two. So for me, those are things around remote consultation solutions, around dictation, which is something that we're interested in at the moment. Staffing is always an issue, and
mm,
work and locum agencies, and also I'm quite interested in some of the organizational politics, practices versus PCNs versus place, and ICB, and how all those interact. So have a think, and your list will be different, but think about what you need. Because then when you talk to them, you say, oh, I'm interested in this, or this. And also think about what you've got to share as well. So you might have done some interesting quality improvement work. You might have an interesting role. You might have a very standard role, but just being able to describe what you do. And then also, if you've got some interesting stories or work that you've done to share, then you can share and deliver value for the other people at the conference as well. Or it might be interesting, like perspectives or ideas that you've got about the workforce crisis, or tension between practice staff and PCN staff. Just make sure you've got something to say. And then you can, once you've kind of had a thought about what your priorities are, what you need to know, what you've got to share, then you can use that to plan your agenda, plan your schedule, which sessions are you going to go to, which sponsors on the sponsor floor do you want to target and go and have a talk to, and think about that beforehand, which is really good. And you can kind of be strategic about the interactions you have with people to make sure both you and the person you're talking to gets something from it. So that's what I'll be doing before I go to the conferences to help me prepare. Got a few tech ideas, really simple ones there. Make sure you take a power pack along, because those wall sockets can quickly become full of people charging their electronic devices. So that's really useful. And I've experimented with lots of different tech, Gandhi, over the years at conferences with that, iPads, laptops, phones. I think I'm currently a phone person in terms of making notes, because I think you can quite easily switch from making text notes to taking a picture of an interesting slide to maybe recording some audio or recording some video, and you can often get that all together in one document on Apple Notes or OneNote to review afterwards. I think that's really the end of my tips, Gandhi. I'm sure you've got lots more to share.
Definitely. So I'm going to go into my tips in a little bit more detail in a separate episode, and we're actually going to film that at the conference and stuff. But I'm going to give you a couple that I'm going to recommend everyone does. So number one, Andy kind of mentioned it, is prepare. Simply put, you need to prepare, because just turning up to a conference without any thought about how you're going to approach this, I think, is not a great way of getting the best out of it. You wouldn't turn up to, say, for example, Alton Towers and not have a rough idea of which rides you want to go in, because there's certain things you want to do and certain things you don't mind, and if you don't prepare for it, you're going to end up not doing what you want to do. So what are the things you really want to have a look at, and what are the things, and prioritize those, basically. Secondly, I think people often have a tendency to go to the things they like, and then that doesn't really expand your knowledge. So actually also consider what are things you wouldn't normally do or go to. So often I tend to go to a lot of conferences and spend loads of time talking to people, looking at the tech and all that kind of stuff. But I always have to hold myself back. And one of the things I commit myself to is that every conference I go to a session I wouldn't normally want to think about, just to expand my knowledge and things. So particularly clinical stuff. In fact, part of my appraisal was I have to go for a clinical update, face-to-face and things, and, go to a session I wouldn't normally want to look at and stuff. It's just lower down on my priorities. And the reason, like I say, I do that is to try and push the boundaries a little bit and learn something new, because that's the key thing about these things, isn't it? And be comfortable is the other thing. Important to remember that potentially you're going to be 8 hours plus. If this is a 2-day event, doing that twice on the floor, walking around, meeting people, moving around, all this kind of stuff. So comfortable shoes, comfortable clothes, in a situation where if you did want to go do something you weren't expecting, you're prepared to go do that. So like you mentioned, Andy, having a power pack is far better than having a plug, cable and stuff and things, and trying to travel light. And that's probably the one I always fail on, because I always have so much equipment and stuff in my backpack, particularly for the recordings and stuff, that it's a bit of a nightmare. So try and travel light, because you will definitely appreciate being able to do that and stuff so much more and things. And it's interesting you mentioned the phone, Andy. So I'm going to give this sneak tip of one of the things I'm going to try this year. Because of the power of AI transcription and stuff, I'm actually going to try and just take a kind of like a recording device and say my thoughts, because actually AI has got so good at being able to transcribe and summarize it that actually I can just record everything, stick it in as a voice note, which is probably a bit quicker, and have AI organize my thoughts into learning actions and stuff. So I'm going to give that a try this year.
That's really nice, actually. Obviously, a bit difficult when the speaker's talking, I guess. But afterwards, just to record your reflections alongside any written notes that you've taken, and then ask them to summarize. That's really good. I'd be really interested to see an episode, perhaps, where we discuss how you got on with that, and whether it did deliver value. Afterwards, that'd be really, really good. So. Yeah, plenty of tips. I mean, I also recorded while I was away in Italy. We were going to do a sort of recorded episode where Gandhi reacted to my video about conference tips. So there is a recording out there of me sat on a balcony somewhere, reflecting on my thoughts in a little bit more detail, and we might put that out as a separate video as well to link to. It'd be a shame to let that one go to waste, so that might be out there as well.
Definitely. So I think if people do want to come to any of the events we've talked about, definitely check in the notes below. I'll put the links to every single one of those conferences we've mentioned, so you can have a look at them. Consider joining us if you want to come and see us and shout out to us and stuff at that time. Alternately, if you want to see Andy's recorded session, have a look at the video coming up here. Alternately, if you want to see my recorded episode of what we got up to at the conference in terms of the equipment you need, then check out here. And there'll probably be other content about what we've been doing at the conference as well. And as ever, we'll be here to tech enhance your primary care and learning. And we'll catch you next time, guys.